it's funny because one of the things that was hotly contested a little while ago was talking about esports being on like ESPN, and you even had Colin Cowherd make all these attacks and using that same old language about, oh, these people are in their mother's basement and making fun of it. Where it's funny because I love sports too, so I
Yep.
listen to these people, and it's so funny because they talk the same way as gamers. When you
Yep.
hear them talking about fantasy leagues, they sound just like a gamer. You can replace their draft pick or their running back with who we're talking about in a video game. And it's kind of interesting because I have seen places talk about having this competitive nature where you can actually, bet with real money, which is something new. And then you have like esports in it. Can you just talk about how does that come together? Because of course you're gonna have some people that's gonna say, "Oh, that sounds cool," but then you're gonna have
Hmm.
skeptical people. But then you have DraftKings and things like that where you can do that kind of
Yep.
betting. So can you just explain so people get more of an idea of how that works?
Sure. So you touched on a lot of things, and something that's really important to me is busting a stereotype of the gamer. I saw that you were at a hockey game, so I'm a Wild fan. I'm sorry, but we also love physical sports. And one of my favorite StarCraft 2 players is also an MMA fighter. His name is Nick Lentz. He used to live here in Minnesota, and he's since moved. Gordon Hayward is a huge League of Legends fan. Dude plays for Utah Jazz. He just broke his foot, so I hope he has a good recovery. But I think it's important for people to see that you can be physically active or play like a physical sport and still be a gamer. There are people who are successful. We don't all live in our mom's basement. I love my mom's. I'd love to live in her basement again, but it's not like that anymore. And I think it's really important for people to see who's gaming, that widens. I think conversely, as physical sports borrow some of our language or they look at some of the intensity we have, you see esports borrowing from physical sports. So like all the jerseys and sponsorships that, maybe your League of Legends or Dota 2 players or StarCraft 2 teams, like they all have logos all over them, dude. They got their own jerseys. And so there's a lot of crossover because there is that familiarity. There is that cross discipline appreciation of things. And I also, this is going to sound mean, but all those people who are just straight up haters, they're getting older and they're going to die off. So I'm not super concerned about changing their minds. I just think it's good to have lots of different people playing games. And so we kind of break those stereotypes down. Now, the second thing you mentioned was in regards to how esports are becoming more mainstream and how people are adapting their modern or physical sports behavior to esports behavior. And tournaments is obviously one thing. Televised events is another. So I've been playing in tournaments for video games and for tabletop games for a very long time, 20 plus years, right? But it was always kind of like underground. And now they're getting televised. You can buy streaming packages. I'm an MLG subscriber for a long time and watching all those tournaments. The production value on a League of Legends tournament is crazy.
Yeah.
It looks just as good, if not better, than some of the pre and post game analysis you might see with professional sports. So as that is going up, it attracts people who aren't necessarily gamers, but they're interested in competition. And you mentioned betting, and that's kind of one thing that we know it. We know it happens with daily fantasy sports. We know there is betting on esports. That's not really what our platform is for. It's built by gamers for gamers to compete directly against each other. But you see very popular services, DFS, daily fantasy sports, like DraftKings or FanDuel, picking up that esports model. So it's very interesting. I think, going back to my earlier statement, there's plenty of room in this world for all sorts of people to get into gaming. And I think those people are more into competition, no matter what it might be. Like if they saw two dump trucks drag racing, they'd be like, I got $5 on the one on the right. And so, but that's all right. Maybe that'll encourage them to play games. Maybe they see games and they want to play them. And so there's that. But for our services, particularly for Evolve Arenas, that's really for gamers and direct head-to-head competition. So it's just a big world out there.